everyone, to another episode of our DigiTalk Architect podcast. Today we have with us Jay Kishubic from Southwestern Consulting. Jay, how are you?
I'm doing great. How about you, Carolina?
Very well, thank you. Please, Jay, tell us about yourself, your company, what you do.
There's a lot to unpackage there. Okay, so why don't we start with this? And it's so funny. I find when people introduce themselves, I don't know if you found this too. You're at a networking event, you're at like a dinner party or something, and we get like as adults, we get so like hung up on what people's titles are. It's like, oh, what do you do? Right? And then they answer with their title. It's like, oh, I'm an engineer, I'm whatever it is, right? And people get hung up, but it's like,
Yeah,
what do you actually do? Like, I don't want your title. Like, a title is just something you kind of put a label on something, but what do you actually do? So maybe I'll start there to go. And this stems from my background, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit today. But have you ever, let me ask or start this by asking a question. Have you ever been in a situation where you've you've been trying everything, right? You're even reading on how to fix a problem. You're diving into people, you're trying to get advice, you're watching YouTube videos, whatever it is, and you're trying to make things work. Like especially if we talk about entrepreneurs, we talk about sales, we talk about leadership. And you're kind of getting little pieces here and kind of moving forward, maybe a little bit, but you're kind of banging your head against the wall. You're not getting the results that you want,
that's sort of
right?
that's sort of daily life.
Exactly. So running up against those kind of hurdles, those obstacles. So that's what I do. That's what I help with. So I'm a
Okay.
sales and leadership coach with Southwestern Consulting and helping people honestly achieve their goals in life. So we talk about business, we talk about personal, but it's first of all, and I mean, I'm sure we'll dive into this a little bit more too, but it's understanding the obstacles that we run into. And the two quickest ways to learn is either by mistake, right? And it's never really a failure so long as you're learning from your mistakes, or it's by someone who's done it before you. So in some of my background,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how deep we'll dive into that, but some of my background is overcoming some of this stuff, learning tons along the way, but even understanding the mental game and the limiting beliefs that feed into where we're at. And it's how to overcome that, how to reprogram ourselves to be able to do that. So that's what I help with. That's what I do.
Very good. But let's backtrack a little bit. Tell us, because that's what you're doing right now, but I know you have an amazing story behind what you're doing right now, because you started as an environmental biotech and you helped grow a company that was eventually acquired, and then you moved on. So tell us about, how you got to where you are today.
Woo. How far, Carolina? How far you want to go back on that one? Uh,
Hey.
well, yeah. Why don't we'll keep it on the professional side? So I actually started in. I'll go back to as far as like post high school. So I started working at a factory, fairly predominant factory locally. Financially, it was a good move, but it wasn't what I wanted. And I still remember how discontent I was. I remember if I should share this story or not. I remember, and this would be kind of funny if it gets out there, but I remember looking at one of the tow motor drivers, and the guy, he worked crazy overtime. He made really good money, and we're talking about this is like 30 years ago, right? Made really good money, but he hated his life, right? He was so miserable all the time. And I remember he caught me staring at him one day, and he's like, "What are you looking at?"
Okay.
And I'm like, in my head, I'm saying to myself, "I'm not going to be you." Right? I didn't want that. I didn't want that for myself. I had already done like quite a bit of work even through like my teen years to try to like understand the psychology of what makes people tick, what drives them, how to kind of change your circumstances. Because I won't go into all that, but to get out of some of the stuff that I was going through even as a teen. Like I said, that job set me up financially quite a bit. So it gave me a little bit of an opportunity to put myself back through school. So I went to college, put myself through school, and then got a job get as an environmental consultant. So I did that for about a decade and a half and continued to like keep striving. Like I guess that's kind of ingrained in me too, but I'm always kind of a little bit hungry, always kind of seeing what else is next. Like I always love challenging myself and always love the growth, right? And if you've been around me, you've probably heard me say it's like you're either growing or you're dying, right? Because it's just like
Yeah,
nature, right? So I always want to
of
be
course.
growing. Yeah. But hitting some milestones along the way at consulting and kind of some stuff that I broke a lot of glass ceilings for, but I kind of came to a situation where I hit another glass ceiling. So I was going through a mentorship or business development program at the company that I was in, and that's a great time there. But we restructured, and it was like if you weren't one of like 8 business development consult or leads essentially within Canada, you couldn't even like buy a lunch for your prospect. I'm going, okay, well, I think I've hit a ceiling here. And it was actually a contractor that I was using who they had a startup company. So it was an environmental DNA. So it was up and coming technology. They created a startup company. It was actually a spinoff from the University of Guelph. They created a company to bring this out to the environmental market. And I was actually, during that period of time, I was doing a lot of like conference talks and presenting the ideas at the consulting company I was at, presenting them out to conferences and kind of doing some of their, inadvertently doing some of their business development work. So I actually propositioned the CEO of that company to come on and lead their business development for their environmental division. So things changed a little bit. They had a big pivot within the company, and this was right along the time of COVID too. So big pivot in the company. So I helped to lead their sales, global sales for the biotech. That's the biotech startup you were mentioning. And then we got acquired by a UK based company and then went along with the acquisition to actually lead their North American sales. So I did that for a couple of years, figured out that wasn't where I wanted to be and it wasn't serving me anymore. So I was on to the next. And I know one of your questions I saw in the lead up was go, what kind of got you into coaching? So it was kind of funny because again, I've always been interested in the psychology of things. Like I said, with people, with how to change things and change. I mean, your circumstance should never define you, right? You should define your circumstance. So I started to look at things. I mean, I was certified with Tony Robbins coaching years ago, and I was doing that just honestly. I got into that because of just sheer interest because I was working full time while I was doing it. So I was part time coaching anyway. And then I started to do a deeper dive, and it's things that fueled me and the things that drained me. Right, to understand where I wanted to put my career, where I wanted to put my energy. So I've got a pretty good understanding, or had a pretty good understanding of the things that fueled me. So administrative tasks were like my number one thing that drained me. But the number one thing that actually was a little bit of a surprise for me was influence. Like I love to bring about and get people to think about it in different ways. And we allowed profanity on this, by the way.
I don't care. I think we're all adults. It's not like
Okay,
we're,
so I've always been called kind of a shit disturber in the sense that
okay, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always trying to find different ways to do things, right? I'm like, I'm never really status quo, and I'm always trying to find different ways. So in that breath, I'm going, okay, how can we help people? I mean, to get out of their own way. How can we disrupt systems, right? How can we incorporate different things? And that innovative kind of creative side, I guess, that I have too. But when I looked at even when it came down to like my social media feeds, and I swear it's like 80% of my feeds were about personal and professional development. So when I was asking myself those questions about what do I want to do next, I'm like looking at the things that again fueled me and the interest that I had, right? Always kind of going by or abiding by the philosophy. If you like what you do, you'll be good at what you do because you're going to invest yourself into it. And if you're good at what you
Yeah,
do, you'll be compensated or should be compensated well for it, right? So with that being
right.
said, it was kind of a no-brainer for coaching. And it was just kind of I can't call it a happenstance because I do believe in kind of that energy and the secret. And it's, you know what I mean, where it's like you put something else and you manifest something. I do
Yep.
subscribe to that, at least to a certain degree. And it was about putting it out to
I'm
the
a big,
world.
big believer. I'm a big believer. You know,
Yeah.
what you think is
And
what you
it's so
attract. So,
and it's even what you look for. Like when you start to
yeah,
switch your perspective, you then look for it. It might have been there the whole time, right? But it's just
sure.
finding or switching that perception to be able to look for it or manifest it or attract it into. It's like setting your frequency up to attract it. And it did not take long before I got the opportunity with Southwestern Consulting. And they just meshed so well, like well from a cultural perspective, mission perspective, and which, I mean, we're talking about sales here, which I know a lot of people have the negative perception of sales and like used cars, sleazy, all this kind of stuff. And this company
Every
is,
business,
yeah,
every business
like
needs a salesperson.
it's not even though that they need a salesperson, like they need someone who understands the game of sales too. Like
True.
a lot of companies, and I get it from even startup perspective, may not have the cash to kind of bring someone seasoned on. And part of the problem is some of the seasoned people, they might have 20, 30 years of experience. I mean, I coach people that have 45 years of experience, right? They might not actually know either well the game of sales or haven't touched up on it, or even from if we go even a little higher, talking about the philosophy of sales. Like sales is actually a noble profession. And this is a big misconception. So I'm actually going to dive down into one of your bonus questions, like right off the
Let's
hop,
go.
maybe. One of the myths I think I'd love to bust about sales is that it's got to be a sleazy snake oil salesman. It's not about that whatsoever. Like sales is actually a noble profession. It's one of the oldest professions, but it's a noble profession when done properly. So what I mean by that is if you're out there just to make a sale for yourself, so you get the commission, you get the deal, and you're getting someone into a situation where again, it may not be the best fit for them, right? But you're doing it so you can pay your bills or whatever. That's not sales. That's actually manipulation. But if we're
Yeah.
doing something, and that's what sales is really about, is bringing someone to like your prospect to a point of decision, right? Either A or B or
Mhm.
whatever it is, but it's in service of them. Because if we do something in service of them and we find out what that true need is, and that's what we got to be doing as salespeople to ask the right questions to understand what the real need is, what the pain it's causing, and how can we propose a solution to actually help them, right? That's what sales is. So bringing someone, a prospect to a point of decision in service of them. Because if we're doing that properly, right, we're making friends along the way. It makes the process so much easier, and clients become raving fans who want to share it with other people. So even from the
Yeah.
prospecting side makes it a lot easier. But just from the mindset side, it's sales should not be a sleazy game. It should not be like you're trying to take money out of someone's pocket. It's like you're just helping them make the decision to help their life.
100%. I agree with you. You know, the main thing I think in sales, well, in life is it should be for mutual benefit, right?
Yeah,
Always, right? Like any deal should be mutually beneficial, and whether that relation is because you're selling something they need or they want it that's benefiting them, and then because of that you're getting rewarded, then that's mutual benefit, right? And the other
yeah,
thing to that point, it's I've always said in in sales and in business, you're always better off with 50% of something than 100% of nothing, right? So for the other side, it's like if you're getting 100% of your sale, but that person is not getting, you know, the benefit, then they're getting the 100% of nothing, right? But
yeah.
it's got to be you know, it's kind of that the half empty half full idea, right? You know, it's a little bit
Well, I love that. It's like
different of
yeah, it's a symbiotic relationship, right? Not a
exactly, right?
parasitic relationship. Because that if you're doing it that way, I don't want to do anything with like have any part of it, but I don't want to be doing business with you, and I guarantee my friends won't.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm right there with you. It has to be mutually beneficial, and it has to be, you know, with like with everything, with some sort of level of compromise, right? You know,
Mm,
I do for you, you do for me. I scratch your back, you scratch my back, we're all happy, right? It doesn't happen
yeah.
as often as we think anymore, but that
Well, I
should be the right way.
yeah, and even with that like quid pro quo, like you know what I mean. I love the and what I was thinking about actually kind of coming into this conversation about is back to the service mindset. It's about like prospecting, and it's even when we get out there and prospect. Say we're doing like a networking event, we're going to a dinner event, whatever it is. It's like how can we find out? I mean, one, how can we find out what someone's looking for? What would constitute a success for them, right? Because whether I can
Right.
serve them or not, if I can connect, I mean, one, if I believe in what they do, even in a short meeting, right? If I can connect them with somebody else, I firmly believe the universe gives it back. And I know it's like not getting into like the crazy stuff here, but the universe gives it back. It's back to karma. It's like if I can help someone and even by making a connection, like they're not going to forget that, right? It's not that I'm expecting anything back, but they're not going to forget that. And I love seeing people, like even my own clients, I make connections for them. Talking about like a realtor and a mortgage agent, make the connection, right?
Yeah.
Anytime I can see good people doing business, like good people doing business with good people, right? And if I had anything to do with that, oh my God, that warms my heart.
Actually, I just had that happen to me yesterday. So I
Yeah.
know this guy, he's in the plumbing business. Yeah, I was actually in a networking event yesterday, a networking breakfast. And so they were doing, it's actually a really fun event because it's kind of like a your 3 minute pitch, right?
Oh, that was with the
Um,
chamber. I was hoping to go, but I couldn't find care for my kids. I had to get them off to school. Yeah, I was
so
hoping to go.
I did it. So I went. I didn't speak, but I was at the event, and so you know they sit you on like the table to have your breakfast and you connect with people. So I sat down. We had this, you know, introductions, started talking. I met this guy that's in the construction business. I'm a part of the Chamber of Commerce, so I know a lot of the people that attend, and I do some of the other events. So I've gotten familiar with a lot of the people that are regulars, right? So this guy comes in. I've never met him before. He's in the construction business, and we're talking, and then I looked, and one of the other guys that I know from one of the lunches I participate in, it's in the plumbing business, and I'm like, hey, do you know this guy that's sitting right there? And he's like, no, I've never met him before. Well, let me make you the connection so that you can meet the guy, because I think you guys will have stuff to talk about, basically, right? I had just met the guy, but I figured it was mutually beneficial, right? Like I got no business in the construction industry, but hey, you guys do. But that's
That
the
is
benefit,
so
right? Like
good. And
that's the
I
benefit,
remember,
right? They'll remember at least that I made that connection, and if it works out,
especially if he's new,
it'll be
like new
yeah,
coming into like a group of people that he doesn't necessarily know, he is gonna remember you forever. Like it's so cool to like make things just more comfortable for somebody else, make that emotional attachment for somebody else, right?
yeah.
And it just from a good perspective, like, and you're helping them, helping their business, right? So good. Yeah.
But that's part of sales, right? Like selling is not just selling a product, but selling could be also building a relationship or making a connection that will lead to a sale from another level of connection, let's call it, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a direct sale, where
Yeah.
they're direct, business to consumer. It can be business to connection to consumer, and it's still a positive, a net positive connection, let's call it, right?
That couldn't be expressed any better. Everybody wants to play the short game. Like we want all immediate gratification, and we're just so accustomed to this now. But you got to play the long game. Like this is relational, right? It's about building relationships. It's about fostering them and creating fans out of what you do, and then it spreads the word. I would love to say it naturally spreads the word, but that's I think one of the pieces that's missing is like when we talk about like referrals and connecting and building network, a lot of people are afraid to ask, right? To grow that,
It
right?
is
Again,
hard,
when you made
right?
that connection for the construction guy, right? He'll remember that. But are you asking to be like, hey, who do you know that would be good for me to talk with, right? Who do you know that might be a good
Well, it's
connection for me to talk with?
here's the
Right?
funny part of that story is that when I started talking to him initially, he's like, you and I have to talk, aside for like, you know I have some questions, and I'm like, okay. So he was already memorable for me because he showed interest on what I had to say.
Mm,
And then when the opportunity came up to reciprocate, basically, it's like, oh, listen, I just met this guy, it's a good connection for you too, right?
love it. Love it.
All right, let's talk a little bit about some of your work in terms of what you do at Southwestern Consulting now, because I know
Mhm.
for you right now it's you're working with a lot of sales teams, business owners, talking about all of these things. One of the things that uh, that it comes up a lot. It's like misconceptions about sales and sales process. We're talking about it right here, but especially in the small, medium sized businesses, right? Where oftentimes the founders are wearing multiple hats, one of them being sales, right? I mean,
Mm,
I'm in that bracket anyway. So,
yeah.
what did they get wrong about building a sales system, or, how that process progresses?
And I'm just going over my, because I made a couple notes coming into this one. Because there was a couple other ones that I want to tease out. Back to, because yeah, we're talking about the system side of things. Number one thing is leaders is time management. We talk about systems is time management. Most of the leaders we talk with right off the hop are saying their day is running them. They're not running their day, right? So we talk about a systems
100%.
perspective. That's typically the number one system is like how to get you on what we call an ideal schedule. Something that fuels you, make sure you're focused and stay focused and intentional on income producing activities and the things that are going to move the needle for you, But again, this isn't about just business too. This is about life. This is about the things that you really want, right? So we're talking about family. We're talking about doing the things that you want to do. Because again, at the end of the day, if you're not getting to taste the carrot, right? If you're not getting the reward, you're probably going to run out of motivation, right? So there's either consequence or reward that equals motivation. So it's putting that piece of the puzzle in place and to be able to want to repeat success, right? And again, it's about training your mind to kind of how to do that. As far as wearing the multiple hats, like it is such a big thing. And like I said, from the time piece, right, to get that nailed down. But talking about like we talk about the sales side of things, right? That's a potentially different skill. And again, probably a skill, I'm going to be a little bit partial here, but a skill that doesn't get enough credit for what it is. And I'm talking about good salespeople because there's a lot of salespeople, but I'm talking about people who get it and get the relationship side of things, right? Get the long game side of things, get the service side of things. Those are hard to find, or harder to find for sure. So it's getting the proper help in place. Like when we're having to do all of this, like one is the schedule, but like two is the delegation. Like, can you do everything? Do you have the experience? Like, we're talking about entrepreneurs, like small businesses. Do you have
Mm-hmm.
all the expertise that you need? Like, this is where I see a lot of businesses either struggle or fail. Is one trying to do too many things. Like, we got to think about this. Like, if you stay in a bubble, right? You like if you're
Mm-hmm.
in a bubble, you're going to stay in that bubble, right? You got to break out of that
Yeah.
to understand. And this is going back to like startup days and stuff where it's like you build on the network that you have. Like you find people to offset the things that you may not be so good in or they may be better in, right? And it's creating the resources and network in your life to be able to build that up. And from a sales perspective, it's about finding somebody who number one is a culture fit for what you're doing. Two is probably actually if we take a step higher than that, it's the mission of the company. It's the purpose you want to deliver with your company. This is again where I find a lot of leaders kind of fall off. They've got an idea and then they just go and execute and they're just going. They're chasing a lot of shiny objects. So they're not really focused on what their mission is, what they really the value or the service that they brought, what the distinction or differentiator in themselves and keeping focused on that by creating and I know this might sound a little cheesy because a lot of people think this may be just lip service, but when done properly, this should be your guiding principle. It's a mission statement, it's a creed statement. Like
Mm-hmm.
figuring out and writing that down so not just you're not the only one referring to, but your entire company and even at your meetings that you're referring to back to it to help you guide your decisions, right? So you stay one clear on priorities, clear on the mission of the company, and then reverse engineer your schedule down to be able to execute that. Find out where are gaps within that. Find people who can fill those gaps, right? So again, if we're talking about the sales part, finding people who are a cultural fit that can actually help drive sales, who have a process. And this is probably the next step I would say is like the process. What is your process for selling? Right? Because a lot of people like into they're get into the well, let me know, right? Or what do you think about that? Okay, well, get back to me, right? If we're using some of that, and there's a psychology behind this. If we're using some of that language, I'll tell you what, that's a hope and a prayer. A prayer has got you a better hope of actually closing that deal because we're leaving the ball in someone else's court. Again, as salespeople, we're meant to, again, get someone to a point of decision, right? Is to create some urgency within the conversation. And there's structured ways that we can do this. So talking about process, right? There's
Right.
structured ways that we can do this within the process. And in the process, like everybody's heard of like the happiness is in the progress. The only way to repeat it is if you have a process, right? So if we can be
Right.
able to know what your process is, right, and then repeat it, tweak it, and kind of create more efficiency within it, then we can really get streamlined on things, which then open you up for more time in your day to focus on the things that you need to be focusing on, right? Or the important things like getting your kid to hockey practice.
Yeah. You know what? Personal life and people separate a lot of those things, right? Your personal life lives in a bubble, and your work life, especially for
Mm,
entrepreneurs, lives in another bubble. The reality is, as an entrepreneur, business owner, running a business and having to feed multiple mouths, not just my family,
yeah.
the two cannot be disconnected, right? Um, like one drives the other and vice versa, right? My motivation comes from my personal life, right? And in my drive at work, it's what I can then provide for my family, right? And sometimes my decisions at work are very much, connected to whatever is happening in my personal life, right? Whether it is, like you said, for me, uh, in my life, right, being an entrepreneur and being a business owner has given me the flexibility to be a huge part of my kids' life, especially in sports, right? Which I
Yeah.
know I wouldn't have if I didn't have that flexibility that this provides me. But it comes with a huge responsibility, because you have to sacrifice on both sides of that equation, right? Sometimes it's time on one, and I have flexibility, but I have to make up for it somewhere else, right? So sometimes I
Yeah.
can leave at 2 to go do the things I want to do with my kids, but it also means that when I come back at the end of the day, that for me it's a late evening trying to catch up on a lot of work that I did not get done, right? So it's a constant, it's a process, right? But that
Yeah.
process, it moves with your life. It's never the same, because life changes, right?
Yeah. And that's kind of the best part. It's not supposed to remain static. It's supposed to be dynamic and kind of moves. And having that ownership, I got asked at a networking event a while back. It's like, what's your favorite part about being an entrepreneur? And what's your least favorite part about being an entrepreneur? And the answer for me was the same. It's on me. I love it being on me, but I also hate it being on me, right? Because I love what you were
Yes,
saying, Caroline. It's that discipline. Like, sure, you have the flexibility, and everybody thinks about, oh, you're a business owner, you can do all this, and at the time you want to do it, to be like,
they
everything
don't
comes
see
with a
it.
cost.
They don't see
And
it
I love how you said that
because
too.
they
It's
see
like
the flexibility. If
yeah,
you if yes, they see the flexibility, they don't see the sacrifice, the late night when you have the flexibility.
the nights,
You
the
know how many times
weekends,
I've
the
had this
early mornings.
conversation? Yeah, how many times I've had this
Yeah,
conversation where they go, "You're so lucky, you get to, your own boss." I'm like, "Listen, I am my own boss, right? And I have the flexibility, and I delegate a lot. But at the
yeah,
end of the day, when the end of the month comes, it is on me to have the money in the bank to pay for everybody's food and to feed all those people. How many people?
yeah,
Well, it depends. For me right now, it's the equivalent of my family plus 10 other families, right?
yeah,
So that's the mentally a lot of people don't see, right? And the other hand, I'm like, you're so lucky. You clock in, you clock out. You don't have to worry about the rest, right? You don't have to worry about, how much money is going to be in their bank account at the end of the month to feed the
yeah,
10 families plus your own, right? So I've had this conversation so many times. And it goes something like, you're so lucky. I'm like, huh, am I? Some days I feel very lucky, right?
yeah.
I know I'm privileged, but it's also heavily important that not every.
What I actually you got me thinking. So one of the phrases that I use with my kids quite often is there's no such thing as freedom without responsibility.
100%.
Because yeah, there's so much more to that, but yeah, understanding that work-life balance. Everybody talks about work-life balance. It's work-life integration, particularly when you're an entrepreneur, when you're running your own business. Like you got to be able to manage and have that discipline to go, I get it. I had to leave work early to get my kid to hockey. Now we're coming home late, but guess what? I need a couple hours to prep for that meeting for tomorrow, right? Or I got to get everything done on the side, right? Budget tables, whatever it is for you, right?
You know what? It's funny because sometimes in my home office I have a TV that I usually keep, and I usually have it as just a music channel with a nice video. Helps me, I like the
Yeah.
music background, but I'm a big soccer fan, so on soccer days I usually turn it on and I have the game on, right? And you say that to people, it's like, you're so lucky. I'm like, I know, right? Like I can do that. The thing is, at the end of the day, I can do it within reason, right? I can
Mm,
listen to the game. It doesn't mean that I don't do my work, right?
yeah.
That's one. And if I pause for 45 minutes to watch that, the 45 minutes have to come from somewhere else, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's
Exactly.
compromises, right? It's always a compromise. And it's a lot of that, right? what people and we get back to the sales, but this is fun. It's about talking about business and
Yeah.
entrepreneurship and what it means to do sales, to have a business, to manage life when you have to manage a business, and that is all fair game for everybody, right? Going back to kids, right? Because like you're so lucky, right? You work from home, you get to dictate your own hours, and a lot of what I say, hey, listen, first, I didn't start here, right?
Mm, yeah.
And I can tell you, I started at the very bottom of the pile, right? Not McDonald's, that's not bottom of
Yeah.
the pile. When I first came to the US and Canada, way back, my first jobs were, so I'll tell you, I have a couple of fun ones, but I'll tell you a couple of the ones that are. So my very first job was a sweatshop in the US building. So this is funny. You remember back in the day, all the Pokemon necklaces and things kids used to
Uh,
collect?
yeah.
My
Yeah.
very first job was putting those things together. I had to
I
put together
I
like
would have never
a
thought that was
thousand
in
of
the
them every
US.
night. And
Yeah.
this was like, let me tell you, this was like one house in the middle of nowhere, with 20 people in one. Like it was a house, I think it was like 4 rooms, 20 people in each room doing a different task. And
Oh
sometimes he was
my.
putting like the little, the necklace, the little loops to
Yeah.
clip them. That was my
Yeah.
job, like
Oh my
assembling those
God.
little, like imagine doing for 8 hours with the tweezers and pliers all day, doing, all, well, for me it was all night because I did it after school, right? I was a teenager.
Right.
So
Wow.
I would go to school from 7 to 2:30. I think it was my schedule. I would leave the school, go home, eat something, and then go to work from 4 o'clock in the afternoon until midnight. And then I would go back home, do homework, and go to sleep. But that was my job. So 8 hours with the plier doing these little things. You know how sore my hands were every day after that.
Oh, I can imagine.
That was in the US. My first job in Canada was, so I had two jobs when I moved, really early on. We did it. Yeah, I did one with my dad and one with my brother. With my dad, we used to just go deliver the newspaper at 2 or 3 in the morning, right? Winter or summer, it didn't matter. You
Yeah.
had to go. That was hard. I can tell you, the worst car breakdown I had was at like middle of the night in the middle of nowhere, where cell phones were still not a thing, that everybody had, especially if you had crappy jobs like that.
Yeah.
So I couldn't afford a cell phone just yet. So I broke down in the middle of freaking nowhere in Kitchener, dark, and we had to push our car because we had hit black ice and hit the
Oh.
curve, and the tire snapped. So we had to like literally walk from the side, like one of the side streets, into the main road. And so my dad was moving the car, and I kept kicking the tire in so we could keep moving it. And that went on for a few blocks. And this was like 3 in the morning, right? To
Yeah.
find a paid phone. I was right.
Yep.
So I was one. And then the other job that I did with my brother on the weekends was clean a couple of restaurants after they closed, after
Mm.
everybody party, basically. And, if I can tell you that that's a disaster because you're cleaning very dirty toilets and everything else in between.
Yeah.
So to be here from there, going back to the conversation is, I'm here, but it's not what I started. I enjoy this, but I've already gone through every stage of that process, right? I don't get to sit here because I had to earn it, right? And a lot of people don't see that. They just see you're so lucky.
And it,
You didn't see all this sweat and tears
Carolina,
at that.
wow, yeah. Like that's huge. Like so many you got me thinking about while you were telling your story. You got me thinking about like the youth or the I'm getting older, so what I call youth is isn't so young anymore.
Well,
But the
we
people
have
getting
kids,
out
right?
and
Like
trying
teenagers, right? My kids are
Well, I'm even talking
teenagers,
about
right?
like 20-year-olds and whatnot, trying to get out there and trying to make a living for themselves. And I'm not trying to harp on the millennials whatsoever, but it's this mindset about uh like
Hard work.
I re I hate to use the word entitlement, but it's not seeing the work, the effort that goes into it. Again, it's the generation that we're in, or the times that we're in, I think, that you only see the highlights, you only see the clips, right? And you think it's like that piece to get that freedom, right, is like such a short period of time where that's the furthest thing from an example. Like Kobe Bryant has a lot of like great interviews and stuff about that, talking about like the behind the scenes, like what did you really do, the reps you put in, right? And I don't think that's really
Oh, they're
given
behind.
as much thought. Where that's where it goes back to is like find something you like doing, because when you're going to be in the trenches, find a purpose bigger than yourself, right?
Hmm.
Something, a mission that you can attune to, and find something that you enjoy doing there that you have a severe interest in, right? Because in those tough times where nobody's watching, right? The after hours, the before work, the after work, you building to that spot, like nobody's going to be seeing that stuff. And it's going to be you stuck with those three things that I just mentioned. That's going to push you through to make it to the end. Because if we always talk about it, like we talk about, people talk about goals and whatever. Yeah, those are nice, right? Those are nice to have, right? But
Absolutely.
why? Why do you want that goal? Right? Because your why has to be stronger than your want to quit. Because if it isn't, you're going to give up. So you better have a
But
good understanding of those three things to get through there, because you're going to go
yeah.
through some dang dark times. And I'll tell you what, especially from the entrepreneurial side, it's a lonely place, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be. Again, building network really helps with that, right? And there's always obviously the coaching aspect that we can help with that too. But it's a tough go, right? And obviously, market conditions right now are probably not very conducive to a lot of things, but it's setting yourself up. Like it's understanding that it's that discipline to do the things, and that's where what is it? You don't rise to the level of your goals; you fall to the level of your habits, right? So it's a
Oh,
discipline to
that's
create
a
good
good
habits.
one. That's a very good
Yeah,
one.
and it's what you're willing to do to put that in. What are your habits, right? I know one of the questions that you kind of asked coming in was like that the habits triangle that I explained on our when we first chatted there. And that's
Yeah.
exactly it. I mean, if it's
Yeah.
it's for value for this conversation, I can actually go through that real quickly. But everybody have like to picture what we kind of view of, as in coaching and what we do per se is picture a triangle. So on the one side of a triangle, we've got our skills. So we talk about sales, obviously, but I mean, we're on this leadership side too. But if we talk about sales, just for this example, we talk about like your closing skills, you're answering objections, your prospecting, right? All those are technical, learnable training skills, right? On the bottom edge of that triangle, you've got motivation. So it's your self-talk. It's what are you saying to yourself, right? Talking about like there's going to be some dark times. Like sales is a tough game to begin with. It's how do you pick yourself up after that tough day, after you just, you know what, you had that talk with your client or prospect and you thought it was going to close and that was going to set you up for your quarter, for your year, and it tanked,
And then it
right?
tanks.
How do you get
Yeah.
the next day?
Those are
And I know
horrible
you're
days.
thinking of like a couple
Those are
probably right
horrible.
now, right?
I can tell you something else. Connecting the dots. So remember I said earlier, I said your motivation is usually tied to your personal life, and your drive is tied it's you're driven by your personal life, and vice versa, right? Like the two are very interconnected, right? It's so funny you say that, because at the end of the day, my God, I lost my train of thought, but we will get there. At the end of the day, when you connect the dots. So we're talking about kids and how they're growing up too, right, nowadays. But just you go back and you think about life experience, and you how you got here. My life experience, how I had to start from the bottom to get here. And my kids, and my motivation is, I hope that my kids don't have to go through that,
Mm,
right? But then you
yeah.
talk about this generation and how entitlement, a little bit, but that's the thing, right? Like, we have gone through generational, of people that have worked really hard to get to where they are today. And a lot of it was driven so that our kids didn't have to go through all of that, right? But
Right.
now we sit here and we say, well, our kids are entitled, but because they've never had to experience that. But that's our own doing, because we didn't want them to,
Right.
right? And
Yep.
I want to connect the dots, because my husband and I also talk about this a lot. And we saw this quote, and I'm sure you've heard it, but it is so true, right? Difficult times create Strong people create good times create weak people create
Yep.
difficult times, and the cycle repeats, right?
Yep.
And so you put it together, you say our motivation, it's almost what's made our, our younger generation, entitled in a sense. And then I don't think you're wrong in saying it, because it is true, right? But at the same time, it's like, well, but we didn't want them to see the hardship because we lived through
It's
it.
so
But at the
funny.
same time, it's so complicated, because it's conflicted feelings about the same motivation,
Mm.
right? You're like, but I want them to be strong people, but I know they're not going to be as strong as I was, because they didn't live through all the hardship I had to live through, right?
And
And I'm not
yeah,
even saying I had a bad life, which is crazy, because I know 100% had a lot harder, than I did. I just, I was an
you
immigrant.
shared with me some of your story. That's not an easy go. And then we're not even talking about what we heard on this call, but you shared with me some other stuff too, to be like, yeah, that's not an easy go.
Right, but I will be the first one to tell you I was privileged even then, right?
Mm.
I had really supportive parents. We did everything together. I never experienced hunger. At one point, before being an immigrant, I had a really good life back home. Just it changes, right? You get through the hardships, and how you build, and that's how you build your character. But at the same time, all of that is what made you strong, or made me strong. But it is also now what's kind of making our kids, and I don't mean just mine, but everybody else's that are
Yep.
living through right now, weaker, because they're more privileged and they haven't had to experience all of that.
It's you're right. It's that catch 22. Because when I talk about my why, I talk about my kids not having to go through the same things that I did, to not have to worry about where groceries are coming, to not have to do some of the off-color things that I did to be able to afford lunch. Let's put it
Yep.
that way. But in the same breath, I have to teach them the value of doing that. I got to teach. I can't, because if I just give it to them, right? Now, my whole
Yeah.
thing is I want them to know you'll have your base level, right? So your basic needs, and you've got the support and the teachings that I can give you, and the support for like believing in yourself that we can overcome whatever obstacle is going to be in our way, right? When it comes down to the value of hard work, I'm sorry, I'm not doing it for you, because I don't want to, like you said, I don't want to create where it's like weak people. My
Weak
whole goal
people.
is by
Yep.
the end of this, when we talk about raising kids, it's like not to be in a comparison mode, because comparison is the thief of joy. But it's like I want my kids to walk circles around the other kids. I want them to be able to own a situation, own their part of it, right? And
Hmm.
be able to work through any barrier that they come across, right? If I did that, then I did my job. So that also means that I can't
100%.
give them some of the perks just by handing it to them. They got to earn it. It's funny because I literally created, I'm not sure if this is a little bit of overkill, but a couple weeks ago created like a family code of conduct for just a reminder. So if you ever don't understand what the standards are for the family, there's a code of conduct. And one of them is earn it.
Yeah. You know what? I don't have it written, but I do have like something that's for my kids. I'm like, it's more of like, so I look at it this way. So as I said, my kids are in competitive sports, right? Both of them play soccer competitively. So my thing to them, it's, we've grown up with these standards: do good, good, be
Mm,
kind, right? And you know be an example of other people, for other people.
love it.
So, don't bully, but I
Yep.
also tell them, do not let anybody bully you.
Yep.
It's that simple, right? If you initiate it, I'm going to be very, 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 very mad.
Yep.
But if they initiate, I encourage you to defend yourself, right?
You have my permission.
You got my permission to defend yourself, exactly. But I always say, if you start, and let's go, you start. If you start shit, you are going to suffer the consequences, right? That's my code of
Wow.
conduct, right? If they started, you just have to defend yourself. Yeah, right? But if you did something or help you God, it's that simple, right? And the way I usually tell them is like, you enjoy privileges that I give to you. You enjoy,
Mm,
soccer is a
mm,
privilege. Your phone is a privilege, right? I as a parent, only have to provide for you three things. That's my responsibility: shelter, food, and clothing.
Yeah.
Now, let me break that down. Shelter is your house. You will always have a room. But what's in that room is a privilege. It's simple. What's in that room, it's a privilege. All I have to provide for is a mattress. You sleep.
Yep.
I don't have to provide all the other comforts, right? Clothing is my responsibility to clothe you. Whether I clothe you with Nike or thrift stores is your decision. And the third one is food. But nowhere in that section it says that I have to give you the best of the food. All I have to do is make sure you don't go hungry. So I can just
Yep.
give you water and bread and you're fed. And that will keep you alive. Right?
Yep.
The rest, it's a privilege. Nowhere in that it says I have to provide computer, phones, any kind of electronics. I don't have to provide you with power. I don't have to provide you with soccer shoes, soccer equipment,
Yep.
all the other things. All of that and the car we own. That's a privilege. You can take the bus. I don't want you to, but if you don't appreciate it, you can walk, right?
Yep. And
So
you know what? That's kind of where
those
the
are my
trigger
standards.
was.
That,
Yeah.
that's
It's
just,
kind of
that's
where
the
the trigger was for me to actually create that code of conduct is because I saw things slipping a little bit. It's like taking things for granted. And I'm like, okay, this is what the standard is, the status quo. You do this, there will be some privileges. You will always get the necessities, but there will be some privileges, right? And had
you
to
want
kind of lay it out
allowances.
for them.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
want
Oh, the
allowances. That
allowances, you
room.
work.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But that's it. That's the thing, right? Like there is a difference between doing work and helping around the house. In my house, at least, right? So in my
Yeah.
household, it's funny how this conversation went. I did not expect this one, but it's fun. In my household, helping around the house is not working, right? Helping, it's what you do to enjoy the privileges that we provide for you. So
Yep.
doing dishes, doing the recycling, all that stuff. And my kids have their own chores, their weekly chores and whatever. They have that stuff, and that's so you enjoy the privilege. It has nothing to do with money. Now, if you do all of that and you behave, you get money, right? Now, within reason, right? I'm not your bank machine.
Yep.
So,
And I'm
but
with you
that
now.
was it.
There's
That's fun.
this status quo for like the expectations of what you do with the family. So outside of the family code of conduct, right, is the expectations of the chores you do as well. Some of those you'll be paid for, and these are like well known. Others aren't. They're just an expectation to do exactly like what you said. It's like to get the privileges that you get.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we went a little sideways there, but let me bring this back a little bit into our
Yeah.
talk on sales and business. Now, when we talk about sales, going back to I'm in the business of marketing, you're in the business of coaching, mostly sales and all that stuff. In your view, why do so many companies struggle to convert leads, even when the marketing is working? And I know you have a big opinion on this one.
Yeah. And it's funny in talking to even friends own like digital marketing firms, same kind of thing. It's like even even for what you can do, you can get leads for people, right? But then their clients aren't happy because they're not converting the leads, right? So then it's not leading to close business. So everybody wants to point the finger whose problem or whose fault it is, right? Where if you're getting leads, like assuming they're qualified leads, right? So actual potential buyers interested in the product. You're getting qualified leads. My question to you is like, what are you doing with them? Like, do you have the experience to close them? Again, a hope and a prayer isn't going to get you there, right? It's like a goal without a plan is just a wish. So do you have the training to be able to close those leads? And by that, I mean, do you understand the series of questions? What is your process to one, be able to reproduce it, but what is your process, excuse me, to find the need, find the pain, right? Then, because here's the other part to it. Now, you know what? This is probably one of my biggest pet peeves in sales. So when everybody gets the calls from the air duct cleaning service people, right? Like, hi, my name is so and so. I'm from the air duct cleaning service. Here's what I do. This is what it costs. And everybody jumps into the pitch way too quickly. We've assumed that they have permission to present. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like salespeople, we're no different until we differentiate ourselves. We're no different from the air duct cleaning service people calling on the phone. we got to get permission to present. So the first thing is create a buying atmosphere in order to actually present to them, right? Well, so you do that by creating, well, I shouldn't say by creating, finding the pain, right? Developing the pain, and then creating a buying atmosphere to be like, if you're open to it, right? I can show you what we can do to maybe alleviate that pain, right? So if you're salespeople right there, there's a lot more to this process and there's a lot of intricacies with this. It's like I said, it's a more detailed process than what a lot of people really understand from a sales perspective. But if your salespeople aren't doing that, if they're not able to find and develop the need to start with, right? Or if they're jumping into their pitch, right? Assuming that your product or service is going to sell itself, which is the biggest crock of crap I've ever heard in my life. If they're not doing that, right, then you might want to invest in somebody who either knows how to do it or somebody that can help them learn how to do it, if that makes sense. Because again, if we're
It
leaving
does.
leads on the table, if we're leaving qualified leads on the table, right, we're
Yeah.
not closing business. And how many times again are we leaving it in their court to be like, well, let me know what you think, get back to me, please. And then like a week goes by, 2, 3, 5 weeks go by, and you still got it in your pipeline. You're still counting the commissions for your board to count at the end of the year, whatever it is, right? And meanwhile, you're actually taking away from the time it takes you to actually get other leads. It's how do you close that sale earlier? By close, it means yes or no. It's not the maybe, it's getting away from the maybe, and then have an effective follow-up system that helps you keep things on track. Create that motivation throughout the process. It's creating that momentum, right, to get your prospect to a point of decision. Whether it's a yes or no, it's up to them, right?
Yeah.
But control the activity along the way in order to get you the result, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Listen, we are hitting almost the hour. I think we're gonna have to break this podcast into 2 episodes now because we got.
That's good. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? It's all in good nature because I know we sidetrack a little bit, but at the same time, it's all connected, right? Like kids, business, they are the future of the business at the end of the day, right? So it's important to talk about all of
Mm.
these things, right? It's they're not separate per se. It's all interconnected, you know. Like we said, some drive the other, and vice versa. It's all part of the game. So
I've actually challenged myself to be more open with my kids about my business because I want them to see the ups, I want them to see the downs, right? But I actually get to share with my kids, and I'll do this at the dinner table, right? We'll talk about what we're grateful for. But in there, it's like, what did I overcome to be grateful for that? What did I do? What was the activity or what was the challenge, right? In
mhm,
order to be grateful, in order to have something that we have, in order to whatever it is. And I'll actually share even testimonials. When I get testimonials from my clients, I'll share those at the dinner table because I want my kids
right.
to see the struggles I go through and then the outcome on the other side. Because again, if
You know,
I'm going to get them to
I have
reproduce
to
and do
admit,
something like that
I'm
in their
not.
own life,
Yeah, you know what? I have to admit, I'm not as open in that
well,
regard,
I
right?
did that because I was trying to
But it is
protect my
true.
kids, like, and
Yeah,
I
that's
didn't
just
want them
it,
to
right?
see it. And then it was probably about 2.5, maybe 3 years ago. I kind of came to that epiphany where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm holding back from their development because they're not seeing what I go through. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I would actually rather be vulnerable and let them to see into me, even as a person, but into what I do as a business, because I want them to see that this isn't easy. Like the fact that they get to play hockey, they get to go on ski trips, they get to do this stuff, right? This comes at a
Yeah,
cost, right? And I want them to see that.
100%. Yeah.
It's not that I'm not trying to rub their nose in it, but I'm like, hey, this is what I want you to do. I want you to understand what it's going to take. And I want you to have the why to want to do it and to find their way back to their standard, meaning the life that we've created for them, find their way back to their standard. But I got to give them, if they're going to do it, I got to give them the tools to be able to get them back to that. And the only way I'm going to do that by the time that I have with them is to kind of open up the curtains and let them see, right? Especially from an entrepreneurial side, especially from a business side, right? What needs to be done in order to do that.
Yeah, you got a really good point there. All right, Jay, thank you so much for coming out today and sharing your experience, your knowledge, and all this family stuff a little bit with us. Thank you so much for spending this last hour with us. And honestly, I hope you come back and we can do a second round of this,
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we've got a lot to talk about yet. For
right?
sure. Yeah, I love coming back on.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. This is the wrap for today's episode. We hope to see you again in the next one. And for you, Jay, thank you. And we'll hope to see you soon. Take care, everyone.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Carolina.